Today on TFL Bike, we are answering a very important question. What is the best sort of parallel twin engine? And we're going to answer that question the best way we know how, which is trying out a few different options on the road. So we're going to get both of these bikes out onto the street and see which one we like riding better. Now, parallel twins are engines that you can find in tons and tons of different bikes. Case in point, we have more of a sport style full fairing bike here with the CBR 500R. This is a brand new bike from Honda that you can buy at any dealership. Here on the other hand, we have a naked bike. This is a 2015 Yamaha FZ07 that I borrowed from a friend of mine for this comparison. So these are two very different styles of bikes that you can get with a similar engine configuration. But while these are both parallel twin engines, there's a very important difference between these two. The Honda has a 180-degree firing order, whereas this Yamaha has a 270-degree firing order. So this is a cross-plane engine. And looking at the engine block here, you can see some of our favorite words here at TFL Bike, CP2. This is an engine that Yamaha has put in tons and tons of different bikes. So the current version of this bike, the formerly FZ07, is now the MT07. That's also got a CP2. You can also get that same bike with retro styling called the XSR 700. You can even get this engine in an ADV with a Tenere 700 and a full fairing sport bike with the Yamaha R7. So Yamaha puts this CP2 engine in tons of bikes, and that CP means cross-plane. So it doesn't sound on paper like a massive difference, 180 degree versus 270 degree, and there are pros and cons to each, but there's one major difference that we'll check out right now while these bikes are side by side. This CBR 500R belonging to Honda is completely unmodified. So we have a factory exhaust, yeah, really doesn't make a whole lot of noise, to be honest. It's pretty muffled, unlike this modified FZ07. This bike is very loud, and one of the fantastic things about this CP2 engine is just how good it sounds when you open it up a little bit. But for our ride, we'll go ahead and start out on the CBR 500R. So let's fire up this bike and see how this 471cc 180 degree parallel twin rides. Now, one of the advantages of a 180 degree engine is that it needs less internal balancing, and well, that's a perk in terms of engineering. In terms of the riding experience, I mean, this motor revs up really happily, which is one of the fun things about it. But I think it lacks some of the character that you get from a 270 degree twin, and this is something that Honda knows because they make bikes with a 270 degree twin. You can get just that in an Africa twin with the 1100. That's 270. Now, what I will say to this bike's credit is it does really rev out pretty nicely. Again, the sound isn't there so much, but you bring this bike out and it's really happy to rev because this engine doesn't have these big counterbalancers on them to make up for any lack of balance in the engine that you would get as a result of it being a 270. So this 180 revs really, really nicely. It's not an especially powerful engine, pretty small displacement at 471 cc's. Overall, this CBR 500R would make for a really great beginner bike. It looks aggressive because of these fairings. It's actually a pretty mild riding position, and Alex did a full review on this motorcycle where he went through every detail about this bike. So if you want to see a full review on what it's like to ride the CBR 500R, definitely check out Alex's video. In this video, we're more interested in this engine specifically. And yeah, it's not at all a bad engine. I mean, Honda is good at making engines. It's one of the main things that they do. Yeah, just it's lacking some amount of emotion, and I'll be honest, I haven't heard a CBR 500R with a louder pipe on it. So maybe if you were to open up this bike a little bit, it would have some more of that excitement linked to it, but at least in stock form, it just feels like a very utilitarian, functional machine. It doesn't feel exciting or special because of the powertrain. There's a lot of other really great things about this bike, like how comfortable it is, especially considering the way that it looks, because again, step off of this bike, this looks like a very aggressive motorcycle. It definitely has that exciting appearance, but you just don't get the same excitement from the engine. Whereas in this Yamaha, this is one hell of a motor. I mean, especially with this pipe, from the moment that you power it up, oh, what a beast. And I gotta say, I mean, this is one of the most important things about being on a motorcycle here in the US, at least, is enjoying it, because in the US, motorcycles are generally playthings. In a lot of countries, it's just a practical form of transportation, but here, people usually buy motorcycles as their second or third vehicle, not as their main form of transportation. Not to say that no one buys motorcycles as their primary form of transportation, but it's just not as often the use case. So having that character from an engine, oh man, this motor is so good. Oh, it's nice and torquey, and again, this is a 689cc motor, so it's inherently going to be more exciting because it is a bigger, more powerful engine. But man, here, we'll slow down a little bit and ring this guy out. Woo! Oh my god, it's such a spectacular engine, this CP2. There's really no bike with this motor that I've ridden that I didn't absolutely love, because this engine just gives every motorcycle it's in so much life. It's fantastic. And that just comes down to that cross-plane configuration. I mean, if this were a 180-degree firing order, it would be more like that Honda, and it would just lose a certain amount of character. Now, this is, granted, opinion. This is a really fun bike to ride, whether you're starting out, maybe getting into your second motorcycle with a bit more power, or if you've been riding for a long time. Even if you have bigger, more powerful bikes, you can hop on any motorcycle with a CP2 and have a good bit of fun. It's not the most powerful thing in the world, but it's still gonna give you a good time in pretty much any kind of bike. And I know a lot of people were really upset when the R7 came out and the R6 went away, because obviously R6, a lot more horsepower, and so plenty of people were missing that inline 4. But even the R7 is a phenomenal bike in itself. I mean, Alex and I, we've had a lot of good days on the job here riding motorcycles, and if you were to ask Alex, and I have, he would tell you that the most fun he has ever had at work is the day that he spent on the track on the R7, and that's a video that you can also go watch on the channel. He did a full review at the track on the Yamaha R7. That's a phenomenal bike, and he owns an R6, so he understands the love of the R6. Yeah, CP2 is just, oh, it's so good. And good news for us, Honda understands the love of the 270-degree parallel twin. Now, not only, like I mentioned, do they have that as an option in the Africa Twin, but they're even coming out with a new engine for the Hornet. So they announced a 755cc 270-degree parallel twin, which will be more closely matched to this CP2, and that is great for us because that just gives us more options. And with these two bikes, to be fair to the Honda, this bike is MSRP'd around $7,200. If you were to get a brand new MT-07, it would be more like $7,900. And if you wanted to get an R7, which is the full fairing bike with that engine, it's going to be over $9,000. So the CBR 500R is a lot more affordable than, you know, most or really any bikes with a CP2. But if you're willing to spend that extra money, you get a hell of an experience from any of these parallel twin bikes with a crossplane. And there's a lot of companies other than Yamaha that make them. Triumph, for example, like I said, Honda, there's tons of bikes out there that have 270-degree parallel twins. So if you're looking for a bike, maybe something middleweight that has a really fun parallel twin engine, be sure to keep an eye out for something with that 270-degree firing order, because that's the same firing order that you get in a 90-degree V-twin, and that just gives it that extra lumpy character that we love. Now, I am not an engineer, so I wanted to focus on the riding aspect of those different kinds of engines in this video, but be sure to drop me a comment down below and let me know what you guys think. Are there some of you out there that prefer the 180-degree firing order to the 270? And let me know why. But until next time, that's all for this video, and we'll catch you guys in the next.